All right. Tonight's games are highlighted by a matchup on the West Coast. And I'll start there. Montreal Canadiens are in Los Angeles 24 hours after losing in San Jose. To hear it told by certain commentators, Carey Price is without measure the greatest goaltender ever and is playing fantastic hockey right now. What I saw last night was a goalie who's kind of struggling with the puck. And I think there's a disconnect in terms of his communication with his defense. It reminds me of Elliott early last season for Calgary and what he was talking about, where he would allow a lot of goals, and a lot of them were based on the fact that he wasn't familiar with his defense. You look at the turnover on Montreal's defense. You got Mate, you got Jordy Ben, you've got Davidson now in the regular lineup. None of these guys were regulars for most of last season for Montreal, or in Mate's case, he wasn't there at all. So I'm sure that Carey Price is having a bit of a learning curve with his defense. And it's a defense that I don't know. Maybe they're just not communicating with him. He's not communicating with them. But the struggles are real. And Price is struggling with pucks that he should just cover. Maybe he's used to kicking them out and having Markov clear them out. But whatever it is, there's an issue. So I expect Montoya to play tonight. I know that not everybody has faith in Montoya. I think Montoya is a good goaltender. And we'll see. We'll see what happens in LA. The Kings are playing really well right now. This is the best I've seen Kopitar play in years. This is the best I've seen Dustin Brown play in years. And Quick's been healthy. So those are all reasons why the Kings are 4-0-1 this year to start the season. And for Montreal, lack of scoring has been an issue, but there are signs of life there. Jonathan Drouin really does give them hope. Drouin he's a very good forward. I don't know that I would say he's a first-line center at this stage, but he doesn't really have much choice. There was a quote last night during the Canucks game where they were talking about Bo Horvat and his struggles now that he's the main guy and how he's not been playing really, really great hockey. And they quoted the Sedins as having said the first year that they were first-liners when the West Coast Express was gone by the wayside, saying they realized they had to play really, really well every single night. They couldn't have those games where they were passengers because there was nobody else to drive the ship. I think Drouin is growing into the role, and I think he's growing into it relatively well, considering the pressure that you're going to feel in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver especially. There's just a ton of local pressure, and I would think any original six city you're going to have pressure on you. But we'll see what happens with Montreal. We'll see if they can right the ship on this road trip. If they can beat LA and then beat Anaheim, then they'll go home feeling pretty good about themselves. Detroit is in Toronto. This is a rivalry game between two franchises that once hated each other greatly. I can remember Probert and Domi. I'll remember Probert and Domi, don't we? If we're old enough, we remember. And when they were both in the Norris division. And the Norris division was normally made up of teams that weren't the greatest because the Smythe division had the Oilers and the Flames. But boy, howdy. When it came to fighting, the Norris division was, pretty fantastic. I know watching NFL footage, you listen to Rick Berman, and he'd often refer to the NFC, as the NFC Central, he referred to the NFC Norris. And that was part of the reason why. It wasn't just that they were the Midwestern teams and they were of the same ilk as the teams that were in the Norris division. It was that it was a tough division. It was a rough, brutal, black and blue division. Now, the Leafs and the Red Wings are no longer those teams. They don't play that way. And the Wings are looking to win this game tonight, win it outright in regulation, and tie the Leafs at 10 points. Because I'm sure Detroit is aware that there's people who say that they're punching above their weight. And that's fine. But I think there's something going on with Detroit right now. I think they look really good. I think that they're still unlikely to make the playoffs, but this is one of those statement games where they can prove me wrong. Their goaltending is going to take them as far as they go. The goaltending has really been quite good between Howard and Mrazek. And we'll see how long that holds up. And last but not least, Chicago and St. Louis. So 2 out of 3 games tonight are rivalry games. So you can look at tonight's action and say, well, there's not much going on. Or you can look and say, hey, we've got these teams that really hate each other, and we can just focus on them, and there's not a whole lot going on the out-of-town scoreboard. One game starts at 7:30 Eastern, one starts at 8, and one starts at 10:30. You don't need to channel surf. For myself, I will likely watch Detroit and Toronto, because I want to see how far Toronto can take this. So far, they've lived up to the hype. And if they can continue to batten down the hatches defensively, the NHL's in deep trouble. The league is in deep trouble. Because if Toronto can still score, and if their offense can score it well, and if their defense and goaltending round into form, they can win that division. Absolutely. And in the Chicago-St. Louis matchup, they're trying to fight out who's gonna be leading that division. And St. Louis doesn't want to be left out of that conversation. They've cooled off after their hot start. They've lost their last 2. But they're still playing well. And while Chicago has played really, really well, I could see St. Louis beating them. Because St. Louis has beaten them before. Remember the playoffs a couple years ago where St. Louis beat them, and many people, including myself, didn't give them much of a chance. And they won that. So I'm not going to say they don't have a chance tonight. You guys can let me know what you think about who's going to win out of these games, which game you're most looking forward to, and the ongoing struggles of Montreal, as opposed to every other team that's playing tonight having a really pretty solid start to the season. Like I said, St. Louis has lost their last 2, but I wouldn't say they're struggling yet. So Montreal's the one that really has to buck that trend. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.